I tried to support this ship. You know, I tried to support Katara and Aang's relationship. I tried to get on board, but y'all, I can't do it. I'm sorry. It's the age gap. What's up, guys? I'm Cartoon Lex. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we will be discussing Aang and Katara's relationship and how I think the writers could have handled it a little better. Don't get me wrong, these writers are great. There's a reason why Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite show of all time, but in this particular area of the show, this area, I think they could have done way better, not gonna lie. Now let me be honest with my bias. I never really liked this pairing simply because of the age gap. I know it's petty and it's like 2 years difference, but you guys have to understand, when I first started watching Avatar, I was the same age as Aang, so we were both 12. We were both 12. At that age, 2 years is like a lifetime. That's like 8 years in kid years, if that makes sense. And to be fair, I didn't know Katara was 14 at the time when I was watching the show. I thought she was 15 because she was so much more mature. So I think in the back of my mind, that age gap always lingers, even though 2 years really isn't that big of a deal. That's why I'm trying to address this bias now, because I don't know, I feel like I should address it just to be fair. But in the grand scheme of things, I do acknowledge that 2 years really isn't that big of a deal. I think what I have a problem with the most with Katara and Aang being in a relationship is just the fact that there's a really wide maturity gap for a majority of the show, and it just, I don't know, man. It's like, at the start of the show, Katara and Aang have this big sister and little brother dynamic, which is fine. I think that's how it should have been. You know, you don't want to spring romance on us too fast. I mean, it's only the first season. But the problem is, this dynamic lingers throughout a majority of the show. If you're trying to make them out to be your in-game couple, maybe this dynamic really shouldn't be there for 2 seasons. But as far as season 1 is concerned, this was a good way to introduce us to the characters and, you know, have different dynamics for them and whatnot. Katara was very protective over Aang, and Aang, you know, always went for her to receive advice or whatever. Even though Aang, we quickly knew that Aang had a crush on Katara, like from the first 5 minutes of the show. That boy was gone. Which I thought that was a cute little dynamic. You know, you always kind of have that little kid who has a crush on one of the older girls in some of these shows, so that was a good one. As far as Katara is concerned, she didn't really seem to show any interest romantically in Aang at this point. I mean, if you want to count this moment, I mean, you're grown, you can do whatever you want. I never counted that moment just because it seemed like Katara was more so happy that Aang gave her mother's necklace back instead of like her actually flirting with Aang, if that makes sense. But again, it's totally fine. This is just season 1. We don't need anything too crazy going on between these two this early on in the show. Then season 2 happened. Season 2 started off pretty well, in my opinion. In book 2, episode 1, I remember Aang had the opportunity to learn how to go in and out of the Avatar state at will, but the army general dude was kind of questionable. He had these weird methods, you know, I don't know what his deal was, but you know. This is where Aang and Katara kind of have a more serious disagreement. And I like this because it was such a stark contrast from like one of their last big disagreements in season 1, and it shows that they kind of matured, not just as characters, but they've grown as friends too. It didn't even have to be romantic growth either. I think this was just a way for the writers to show both characters in a more mature light, especially for Aang. He seemed a little less little brother in this episode. And then the Cave of Two Lovers episode. Sorry, wrong clip. Katara, are you blushing? You're crushing on Aang now too? Now this is when you really start to hit at your in-game couple potentially being a thing. We knew that Aang liked Katara, but we didn't know that Katara felt the same way about him. Ooh, they're in love. They're maturing and having serious conversations. They kissed in a dark cave. What's next for these? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. For the rest of the season? Listen. I understand that I just bragged on how well the writers show Katara and Aang's development in the first episode of Book 2 without using themes of romance. Which I still think is fine because you want your characters to have that type of development, but you should also start having more romantic development between your in-game couple too, right? As you get closer and closer to that last episode, you know, that final shot of them kissing, wouldn't it make sense to start ramping up the romance just a little bit? Just a little bit. And yes, The Cave of Two Lovers. Great episode, great development. That was a very good step towards the romantic relationship. The problem is, that was the only step towards the romantic relationship for the entire season! Every other interaction between these two is strictly platonic. Some of it even reminds me of season 1 with Katara kind of taking on that big sister role and being protective of Aang and offering him advice. Seldom does Aang offer Katara advice, and when he does, it just seems like it's played for laughs. Maybe if it wasn't played for laughs and Aang's advice was actually taken seriously, the age gap wouldn't be such a big deal! I don't think I'm gonna get over the age gap, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm not against Aang and Katara's relationship being portrayed as platonic. In fact, I prefer it since they're so young. But if you're gonna commit to these two being your in-game couple, then I think it would have been best if they had more moments that hinted at them being in-game. And these wouldn't have had to be these big, grandiose moments. Maybe have Aang give Katara a compliment and then all of a sudden she blushes before saying thank you, and then they stare at each other for a while. Like, remember that Hey Arnold episode when Phoebe and Gerald did the same thing?
Gerald, your solo tonight was inspired.
They just stared at each other for like 12 hours. Katara and Aang could have did something similar in Book 2. What happened here, people? And I don't think I can count this moment because it seems like she's just kind of happy to be in a good spot again. Then again, maybe it's subtext. In Book 3, it's kind of more of the same in my opinion. Here's my issue with Katang in Book 3. We don't get enough of this potential relationship from Katara's perspective. Actually, that can literally be said for the entire show. Sure, we have moments like this, but those moments are few and far in between. We know that Aang likes Katara. He blushes at that girl at least 30 times a day. But this is where I think they really should have focused on Katara's feelings for Aang. And to the writer's credit, in Book 2, Episode 3, Katara and Aang share this moment.
Aang, everyone's watching. Don't worry about them. It's just you and me right now.
But we've only seen Katara blush over Aang like one other time, maybe 2, or maybe 3. This was a good moment, but they should have built upon it, and they just didn't. It's not like they didn't have time. It could have been like an A or a B or a C plot in one of the earlier episodes. This was a good moment too, but I'm not talking about the kiss. I'm talking about the moment leading up to it. They're both awkward and fidgety. There's tension. If they were just friends, a moment like this wouldn't have been awkward, right? Usually when these two get together, they won't shut up. This was a good moment. I think this kind of clues us in on how Katara was feeling about Aang at the time. But again, the writers didn't really do much to build off of it or even build up to it. And the next time Aang kisses Katara, things don't go so well.
I just said I was confused.
And we all know what happens next. They have a fight, but then they kiss after that and they live happily ever after. Woo! I mean, I guess it's fine. But it would have been nice to see things from Katara's perspective. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling. I think the main 3 things working against this ship is the little brother / big sister dynamic that lingers on a little too long throughout the show, the lack of romantic tension between these two for a majority of the show, and not seeing enough of Katara's perspective on the matter. That's it. I've said my piece. Please comment down below to share your feelings and your opinions on this ship. That's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, please hit it with a like. If you want more content like this, please subscribe. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned.